Hello, welcome to today's video, which is going to be on the Wavebreaker's fin at Refinement Rank 5. Now, I understand this is not going to be a very practical video for most people, because the Wavebreaker's fin is a weapon banner exclusive weapon. You're unlikely to pull 5 copies unless you pull on the banner consistently over a period of time, or go really hard on it just once. I don't know. I just happened to get lucky when I was going for Red Horn refinements, which I didn't get, by the way, but that's fine. And here I am sitting with R5, so I just thought it'd be fun to do a little review on it, show you who it's good on, who it's not so good on, and how strong it can be. But before we get into today's video, don't forget to join me on twitch.tv/Meejin, M-E-E-J-I-I-N. You can witness absolutely stunning moments like this. I feel like if you wanted to send a child into a coma, any child, it wouldn't be that hard. Because children are weak. Simply amazing. So join us there if you want, and let's get into today's video. Alright, so Wavebreaker's fin, here it is. I'm just going to quickly go over what it does and what situations it is good for. Basically what the Wavebreaker's fin does is it gives you extra elemental burst damage based on the combined energy cost of your party. So as you can see here, these blue numbers are what's going to change with each refinement. So at R5 it's obviously quite powerful, but let me just run you through each refinement rank. At R1 it'll take 0.12% of the party's combined damage, with a maximum of 40% of the burst damage being able to be achieved. At R2, it's going to be 0.50% of the party's burst cost, with it maxing at 50%. R3 is 0.18 of the energy cost, maxing at 60%. R4, 0.21 of the party's burst cost, maxing at 70%. And at R5, it's 0.24%, maxing at 80. So regardless of what refinement you have on this weapon, you're going to be reaping the maximum benefits at about 330 burst costs for your party. If you go over 330 combined energy, then you're just going to be going over the maximum potential that the weapon can give at any refinement. So 330 is about the max you can get. So that's what the weapon does, and based on the passive it gives, it's going to work best with characters that fit 2 criteria. The first is that that character does a lot of burst damage, or has a kit that is focused around the burst, because if you slap it on a character whose burst damage is not supposed to do any damage, or does pretty minimal damage, then you're not really reaping the benefits of the weapon. The second criteria is that that character works well in a comp with a fairly high energy cost. Although, as I'll discuss later, it can still be really strong at a fairly mid energy cost. But that's more of an R5 thing. At R1, you'll definitely want to be running this in a higher team cost comp. Otherwise, you're not really getting the most out of it. But at R5, I would say mid to high energy cost. But because of those reasons, it's not as universal as, say, a Favonius Lance, which you could slap on almost anyone and get a nice little benefit. It's really only going to work for you for a few characters in a few comps. So let's talk about... What was that? So let's talk about who they are. All right, so here are the 3 characters that are going to work the best with Wavebreaker's fin. Obviously, the first go-to choice is the Raiden Shogun. The Raiden Shogun does huge burst damage, and a large portion of her kit is focused around the burst, so it makes sense to put it on her. It also makes sense to use it in comps with the Raiden Shogun, because she has a 90 energy cost on her burst, which is as high as we have seen so far. In addition to that, one of the favorite comps for the Raiden Shogun is a national team, which can include Xiangling and Xingqiu, who both have 80 energy cost burst, which is the second highest you can get. So it makes sense to run it on a character like the Raiden Shogun. Xiangling similarly used a lot in national comps, 80 energy cost, and her whole kit is centered around her burst, so she's the second great option. And lastly but not least, we have Rosaria. I did a whole revisiting Rosaria video. I will link it right here, right above my face actually. I won't go into too much detail about Rosaria because I went into more detail in that video, and I compared Wavebreaker with a bunch of weapons. I'm just going to showcase it today on her, but if you want more detail, I would recommend checking out that video. Spoiler alert, it was her best weapon, beating out even Homa in a pretty mid energy comp team. So that's actually who I have my Wavebreaker's fin on right now. She doesn't have the highest personal energy cost. It sits at only 60, which is one of the more mid ones, but still it's an excellent weapon on her. Okay, don't mind Chongyun. He is standing in for his auntie Shenhe. So when I was considering who this weapon could be good on, Xiangling and Shenhe did come to mind. It would not be my first choice for either of them. First of all, I assume a lot of people build their Xiangling as a shield bot and not as a nuke burst Xiangling. But if you were going for a nuke burst Xiangling, you could throw Wavebreakers on him to get the most damage out of your burst. Maybe you have DPS Xiangling, I don't know, and you just want to do like big PP burst. It's possible, I could see it working. Although one of the problems with running this on Xiangling is that he has a very low burst cost. He's part of the group of characters that have a 40 burst cost, which is as low as it goes. So you'd have to make up for his low burst cost by running him with other characters that have a higher burst cost. So like I said, that's going to be a niche situation. I'm just throwing it out there because I think it's possible. but, you know, niche. Shenhe's the other character I thought that this could work on because her personal damage comes from her burst. So if you weren't using your Shenhe as a support for another cryo, and instead were using her more as a DPS, then I could see Wavebreakers working. You'd have to run the numbers on like an optimizer to see if it would actually work out for you, but I'm just saying that I think that is possible for these characters. All right, sorry, once again, I don't have the last two characters I'm going to talk about. So, Venti standing in here for Zhao, and Diluc standing in here for Hu Tao. They're similar. These are two characters I want to point out that Wavebreakers would specifically be not good for. And the reason I just want to quickly go over that is because you might initially think that this would be good for those characters because they are more DPS-based characters. But when you burst with Zhao, you're not actually doing burst damage. All his burst does is boost his charge normal plunging damage and give him the ability to plunge. So it's not actually burst damage. So this would not be a good option on Zhao. Hu Tao, on the other hand, does do burst damage, and quite a lot actually, but her kit is very mixed in the sense that her damage can come from both her skill and her burst. I don't think it's worth building so much into the burst unless you're going for like a one-time screenshot nuke build than it is to build her more well-rounded to do damage with her skill so that you can attack and do pyro damage, right? You could test it out, but I wouldn't recommend it. So I just wanted to brush on that quickly. Let's get into some numbers and some gameplay. Okay, so I'm currently in my Genshin Optimizer. It's more fun to test it in the game, but I've been really enjoying the Optimizer lately, so I'm gonna show you the Optimizer. So let's start off with the Raiden Shogun. This is my Shogun's build in the game. It is up to date. So as you can see, she has the R5 catch-on, but we're gonna theory craft it and compare it to Wavebreaker's Fin. Let me copy from Equip so that she has the current build she has right now. And as you can see here, my energy capacity is at 290 because that's what it would be if I was running the Raiden Shogun, Xingqiu, Kazuha, and Benny. So that's where that's coming from. And then as you can see here, I'm in the compare versus equipped tab. So this will compare on the left, my current build, with the right, which is the theory crafting build if I put on Wavebreaker's Fin. So as you can see in the burst damage area, we're obviously doing more damage. In fact, we're doing more damage on the normal attacks and the skill as well. So that's pretty interesting. So the numbers for the Raiden Shogun are showing me that this would be a better choice on my current build than the R5 catch. So Xiangling currently has Favonius Lance. So unsurprisingly, the Wavebreaker's Fin is going to do more damage because Favonius Lance is not really a super damage based weapon to begin with. Let's do 290 on the energy cost and compare. So yeah, obviously more damage all across the board. But I would like to make a note here that that does not mean it would be worth switching to Wavebreaker's Fin on Xiangling. It depends what party you're running, it depends how much energy recharge you can get from your artifacts alone, and it depends how much energy the rest of your team is going to need. Because when Xiangling has Favonius, you can particle funnel with her to your other characters, and if your burst is not ready every rotation, it doesn't really matter if you're doing a little more damage per burst. Overall, you're going to be losing damage because you don't have enough energy recharge to keep your burst up. So if you are theory crafting and you're comparing two weapons, just keep that in mind that the loss of energy is not necessarily going to mean an overall DPS increase over time. That's something that I think you'd have to test out in the game with your rotations to see if you can keep up the burst. If you can't keep it up without Favonius, then of course it'd be worth to switch for the burst damage, but that's just something to note. All right, so I just gave her Staff of Homa. Let's compare it to Wavebreaker's Fin, R5. So understandably, again, only gaining a little bit of a boost in the burst. Staff of Homa is going to win out on the rest of the stuff, which makes sense. And I know we went over this in the Rosaria video, but just to show you a little quick comparison of Wavebreaker versus Homa. She currently has Wavebreaker's Fin on, so I'm gonna click Staff of Homa from here to compare it. Not R5, not that much of a whale. So as you can see here, Homa is going to be a boost everywhere except the burst, which makes sense and reflects what I saw in the game when I did my Rosa testing. So isn't theory crafting fun? Isn't it cool? What a cool little system. Whoever made this, thanks. I've just enjoyed myself, honestly. But yes, I know you're probably sick of seeing the numbers and you want to see me in game do a little bit of testing, so let's do a little Wavebreaker's Fin showcase. I'm only going to showcase it on the three characters that I would use this weapon on: Xiangling, Raiden Shogun, and Rosaria. I am more interested than anything to try it on Xiangling just to see how we keep up with the energy, because Xiangling without energy is rough, right? It's just global out there, and I know he's doing his best, but it's not the damage the Pyronado can do, so let's test it out. All right, so we're gonna do a quick Abyss showcase. Let me quickly grab this off Rosaria, and I'll take a look at the stats. I mean, just a quick sidebar, my Raiden Shogun is not that great. Of all my emblem users, she falls pretty low on the list of priority, so she kind of gets the scraps of emblem, but still, we're still gonna do this. Let's do Shogun National with Benny Boy, Xingqiu, and Kazuha. I'm gonna choose the ER card, just to let you know that that is happening. Ulti Walti, and Ulti with the Shogun. 166. 166,000-ish? That's pretty good. Okay, I'm lost. Sorry, I get lost in Kazuha's burst sometime. Usually my Shogun actually does not hit that much, so that's fascinating for such a sad little build. Let's see what we can do on this guy. 167. Nice. That's really nice. For my Shogun, that is good. All right, so that was the first floor with the Raiden Shogun. Let's do a little Xiangling team and see how that goes. All right, so I'm going to run this with Benny as the main DPS, Xingqiu, Xiangling, and Kazuha, which would give me 280 burst cost for the whole party, which is 10 less than what the Raiden Shogun was running. But what I'm not going to do is click the energy recharge card because I want to see how Xiangling's energy recharge is without her Favonius Lance. That's kind of what I'm curious about more than anything. So let's just do the def attack thing. Alt with Benny, Kazu alt. Let's do a little Xiangling. Now let's see, like, if I'm wetting them, we can maybe get a vape. It's hard to see. Oh, they're already dead. See, I am noticing right now, as you can see, it's not ready. The burst is not ready, and I only used one burst so far. So already, bit of a problem. Yeah, it's just, it's not enough. It's already slowed me down quite a bit. If we'd been able to keep that pace we had at the beginning, ulting consistently for every rotation, then we would have been golden. Don't mind doing that. I'm not doing the next part.
Choose your character.
So without Favonius Lance, she was definitely lacking ER. Not to say that Wavebreaker wasn't impressive, like that was great burst damage, especially when we could catch it on a vape. Catch it on a vape. But for the most part, as a team support, I think I would stick with Favonius just because it would probably be hard to make up for that loss of ER in the artifacts because they're already pretty ER heavy. Surely the damage over time is going to be higher if you're bursting more frequently. In fact, let's redo that, but with Favonius. Again, we're not going to click on the energy recharge one just to see. Let's do a little blah, 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 and a little blah, 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 blah. You know how it be. Okay. So even her Pyronado on Favonius, it's still impressive. Like, I saw 40k there. I know that it's technically going to do more damage on Wavebreakers, but look, I can do this. Get particles, bam, just like that, and my burst is ready. So that's why this weapon is kind of hard for me to replace, and then bam, look, we're already in the next rotation, whereas it took me forever on the last go of it, right? So it's instances like this where I don't really think it's worth the switch. Like, we're already doing this so much faster just because I was able to get her burst ready, and I wish I could have checked it before we had to move to the other side, but that felt much better, right? So even though through Theorycrafting we know that Wavebreaker is doing more damage for her, it's not going to be my choice for Xiangling. However, Rosaria. She has been my top pick for this weapon, and I'm gonna show you why. So Rosa has a 20 less burst cost than Xiangling. She sits at 60. So because she doesn't need as much energy to begin with, I find that it's not as energy hungry when I run her on Wavebreaker. So let's do the Rosa team. I really love this team. I've been running this team a lot. Okay, quick little blah, 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 blah. Let's do a Benny ult. Let's do a Rosa burst. 26k. I wonder how much it's gonna tick for. Let's see. 30k tick, I think I saw. 26k on a tick. See, it's really strong. Even though we don't have much of her burst filled, you can see just one skill fills it quite a bit. So she's definitely not as hungry, and she has a really low cooldown on her skills, so we filled it right back up and we're back into it. So that was a team I've been loving for Wavebreaker's Finn, particularly on Rosa. So there it was, R5 Wavebreaker's Finn. Really, really strong, as you saw, but not necessarily always worth the switch. If you ran a really, really low energy cost team comp, the Wavebreaker's Finn obviously is going to lose value. So it's far more situational than a Favonius Lance that you can just throw on and know that no matter what comp you're bringing that character into, you're going to be set support-wise. Wavebreaker's Finn definitely requires more like brain on thinking. I know we hate to see it, I'm sorry. Especially at a lower refinement because its value is not as great at a lower refinement. So in that case, is Wavebreaker's Finn worth a build? Is it worth your resources? I do think it's kind of an underrated weapon. At R5, no question, I think it's worth a build. In fact, I might even say as much as R3 would be worth a build. You'd probably see some good numbers depending what team you're running and what character you want it on. However, with that being said, would I pull on a weapon banner specifically going for refinements on a Wavebreaker's Finn? Probably not a good idea. Build it if you have it. Don't specifically spend money or pull for it. That's what I'll say on Wavebreaker's Finn. Let me know if you enjoy weapon type videos. This is my first one. I've never done any sort of weapon specific stuff, especially some of the more uncommon weapons. I feel like people in the Genshin community, we kind of have, you know, talking points of certain weapons and it's always the same. And then weapon banner weapons get left out, event weapons can get left out. And if you have those weapons, you might be sitting on a great weapon to use. So I think it's good to occasionally talk about them, but let me know what you think. Because if you hate it, then I guess I won't make more. But thank you you so much for joining me today. Once again, you can catch me live on twitch.tv/Mijin. If you're interested in more extensive testing on things like this, I do a lot of that live on stream. So you can join us there, ask questions, and I can answer you in real time. But that does it for today's video. Thank you so much for joining me, and hope to see you in the next one. Bye! You could catch me on stream maybe sometime. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, I put the weapon on though. Wow, I just walked in here and I didn't even switch the weapon.